Have you ever been for an interview for a job that you really wanted and then didn't get it? Or have you ever come out feeling you could have performed better? Are you about to attend an interview and you're worried that you'll say or do the wrong thing? Or you just want a better job but lack the confidence to go for it? My name's Stephen Conway. In the next hour, I'd like to show you what the experts have to say about getting the career move you want. Using over 15 years of my own experience as a headhunter, we've put together this guide to give you a straightforward, honest and clear approach to getting it right. We've spent hours researching and filming some of today's most respected experts in the field of interviewing, whose jobs are to recruit for many of the world's leading organisations. The most important thing to remember is that these techniques apply to everybody, whether you're a graduate going for your first job or a managing director applying for your 7th. These tips are what successful people use to get the job. So, join me for a fast-paced, decisive guide for the interview minefield and hear the top tips the experts offer to help you get the career you deserve.
The best way to put a CV together is to understand the purpose of the CV. The CV is a sales document. Its aim is to get you in the door, to get you noticed and to get you the interview. You do not need the CV to get you the job. You'll get yourself the job. The main aim is to get the interview, and therefore lots of white space, not too much waffle, clear headings and keep it to 2 pages.
Bear in mind, this is a sales document. This is what your potential employer is going to judge you on initially. So it's absolutely vital that you get this right.
You get these CVs landing on your desk. Have you got the time to look at them? No, I usually delegate to my management team or to the manager responsible for that particular department. Say, look, you look through them. You do all of the, the weeding out, and you come to be with your top 3 or 4. I will then look at it.
A lot of companies now are looking for people that can condense information and can summarise, and if you can't summarise your own life and career, then you're probably not going to be very good at summarising other things as well.
There is some kind of summary at the top that says the thing that you want to say about yourself. For example, you might have had a great performance at your previous company for the last couple of years. And that doesn't always come out when you list out jobs and a career timeline. So it's very important just to say a few lines to say, I've been rated very well in my last few companies and this is the sort of thing that I've been working on. And that just makes it stand out and gets the softer things across that you can't always get across in a timeline. And that should be the first thing that they read.
For me, it's about producing something without mistakes. The CV vetting process is about knocking out and identifying people that aren't right. And the first way that people do that, of course, naturally is to look for badly laid out, badly planned, badly spelled, bad information. So actually the simplest approach is to make sure that your CV doesn't have errors on it.
The CVs I like to read are very much like the reports I like to read. I haven't got time to read through reams and reams of rubbish. I want to see concise answers. I want to see achievements. I want to see statements backed up with qualitative facts. I want it to be easy on the eye, something I can scan through, and it's a passport for me. It's the passport to get that person in for an interview.
I'm looking for that difference, and that difference comes from someone taking initiative.
I'm actually interested in where have you really made a difference? What have you achieved? Those are the most important things that people want to read about.
Tailoring your CV, or at least fine-tuning it for every application you make, particularly if it's a company that you've targeted as part of your vision to go for.
Identifying where you're going to add value to a company. So achievements in your past, evidence that suggests when you do this role, you'll do it well.
If you were a #1 salesman in a company, yeah, that's something to boast about, and you should put that down. But you should also put down #1 out of how many salespeople, because 1 out of 2 is still a good position to be in, but it's much more impressive if you're #1 out of 1,000.
You need to be very specific about what those achievements were and how those benefited the company, the team, your manager.
If you're sending in to a named individual, which hopefully you are, and if you haven't got a named individual, then find out who the named individual should be. Then send it in to them and then follow up with a phone call.
The best way that I've ever experienced of someone having me read their CV was someone who actually called up and said, I'm interested in working for your business. And I went, okay, go on. I'm interested to know why you think that, because I'd never had that before. Someone was actually cold calling my business. They'd done their work, they'd done their research, they'd actually heard about us, and they wanted to get into our industry, and he called me directly. Now, that to me is someone who's got sparkle.
For you to make that call says an awful lot about you. What it says that you're not afraid of rejection, which is vital in this world. You know, if you want to get on in a job, let's say it's a sales job or any sort of job, you know, the rejection is not personal, it's business.
Often you'll only get a conversation with the PA to the HR director, for example, but it just shows that you're following up. And sometimes that PA will then go back to their boss and say, this guy sounded really good, followed up on his CV, sounds great, I think we should meet him. PAs never underestimate the influence that PAs have on their bosses.
PAs are fantastic. People think they are barriers, and so to a certain extent they are, but they are also human beings. They also like to understand and recognise that they are the power behind the throne. If you understand that they are the power and respect them for that, it's amazing what you can get from a PA. Utilise the PA to help you to get what you want.
Even ask that PA to send you some company information, because that's showing enthusiasm, and that'll get back to that sales director as well.
So when your CV does come through, someone will say, oh God, that's the guy, yeah, let's read that, let's put it on there. They might not even read it, oh yeah, he's worth it, let's put it on there anyway, get him on the shortlist.
If you haven't got a job description at this stage, then this is a great opportunity for you to go and get a job description so that you can go and do your homework. With larger companies, that shouldn't be a problem. Sometimes with smaller companies, that might be a verbal job description. You want to make sure you have a pencil and paper handy and make as many notes as you can when you're making that phone call.
At the end of the day, it's all about relationships. Doesn't matter how big or small any organisation is, it's made up of people. Cultures develop through relationships. The first port of call is you need to understand who it is. You not only understand, but who it is you are going to be talking to. So find out about them.
If you can find out a little bit more about the role, a little bit more about how many people have applied.
Remember, your company, this company that you're going for, that you want the job in, they'll be seeing a lot of people. They could be seeing 3, they could be seeing 5, they could be seeing 10. You imagine all those people that they're seeing. Let's say they're seeing them over a day or 2 days. That's a lot of people to see. Minimum of an hour each. They'll be glazed. They won't remember who the hell they're talking to, let alone how wonderful you were. Give yourself a chance. Make sure you're the last.
Researching a company before you go to interview is really, really important. Don't go if you're not going to do the research. This starts with the internet. Look at their website, download as much information as you can, talk to anybody that might work there. Look at Companies House, try and get their records to find out how much they're turning over, how stable they are as a business. Part of your research is to ensure that you can demonstrate your keenness. Part of it is actually to make sure it's the right position for you and the right company. Too many people take jobs without realising what they're letting themselves in for.
The only way you do that is you read up on your company. You gen yourself up on the business you want to work for. If you get excited about what you've seen, go and talk to some customers. Go and read up, look at the accounts, look at the website, talk to a few people. Get familiar with the business you want to work with.
If you know anybody that works in that company, ideal. phone them up, buy them a beer, get close to them and start learning as much as you can about that company. Now, if you don't know anybody in that company, there are some things you can do to find out what's going on. Phone that company up and pretend to be a potential customer. See how they deal with you. What sort of response do you get? How are you handled? And do a bit of mystery shopping in effect. Because if you're applying for a sales role, for example, it would be really useful to know how are they handling potential sales inquiries at the moment. That information can be really useful as a discussion point in the interview.
Well, the key things we need to know about the company itself, the products we sell, the market sectors we deal in, how we're performing in those sectors.
Have an understanding of how long they've been established, what their achievements as an organisation are, where they're going for the future.
Print off everything that you can possibly think of. Can you get companies' reports? Can you get details, downloads from the websites? Can you get brochures? Are there press releases available? Is there anything in the newspapers about them? Cut it out and keep it. And when you go to the interview, take it with you. It'll stand you in very good stead.
Get to know something about that company that your potential interviewer doesn't expect you to know. And ideally, if you've got some new ideas for them, then they will be much more receptive to you as a candidate. Don't think about getting the job. Think about doing the job when you're actually in that interview. So what are the skills that this person's really looking for me to achieve? What's the objective of this job? Why are they hiring this person? Put yourself in the hiring person's position. If you were interviewing me, what would you want to know? What do you want to hear? What do you not want to hear?
Once they've looked at the company, is look at the competition. It's a competitive market out there. Companies are pitched against each other.
If you've identified that the company you're going for an interview makes widgets, then just type in widgets on Google and you'll see a whole list of other companies that make widgets. So that gives you an idea of who their competitors are.
Don't make the same mistake I made. I joined Gillette, and on my first interview with them, in order to be clever, spoke about the diminishing market of razor blades versus the electric shaver. Because I hadn't done my research, I looked very stupid when they said, well, we actually own Braun, so we'll be all right.
Source as many different press releases as you can, because the press release from the company is obviously putting the positive spin on everything. The press releases from external companies will have a slightly different view on these things, and it's good for you to go in with a balanced view of what's great about this organisation, but where are some of the challenges that they're facing, and raise that in the discussion that you're going to have with the individual.
If it's a public company, read through the annual report. I don't mean read through all the figures. Obviously you need to know if you're going into a company that's making money or not. Read the chairman's statement. Find out what the strategic objectives are of the business. Find out what they're looking to do. Find out what they've acquired recently or got divested. Understand what you're going into.
You also want to make sure, if nothing else, that the company's on a sound, stable footing, financial-wise, because if you want longevity out of a career of the company, you want to make sure that company's going to be around for quite a long time.
Phone up and ask them to send you company brochures. See what type of material they're sending out, what's the quality, what are the key messages that company is trying to convey to me as a potential customer.
A lot of industries have their own industry magazines, which you can look up online, or you can go and subscribe to, or even go to your local library and get a copy.
Marketing departments, sales departments are all very good at handing out information to potential customers. So there's nothing wrong in you ringing an organisation and demonstrating your keenness and speaking to these departments. See what they can send you. You may be surprised.
You can also get a copy of their mission statement usually. It's usually in their financial information and what goals and objectives that company is looking to achieve. Certainly in most large companies, employees carry these sorts of things around their neck, and if you can go in as a potential candidate and know these things off by heart, you're going to be not only impressing your interviewer, you're going to be way ahead of a number of the employees that are already there.
Most websites now will have key individuals, board members. Go on there, read about them. They've all got mini bios on there. Find out where did they come from, previous employers, because you'll probably see a pattern of companies that they like to hire from. Now, if you're one of those companies, ideal.
Use Google, that's what it's there for. Put in the name of the person that you're going to meet, see what comes up. You'll either find them, which is great, if they've printed any articles, if they're published in any magazines, you'll get to see where and when. If not, however, you'll certainly find someone with the same name who turned out to be the first person that climbed the North Face on Everest. To drop in any interview, the similarities between someone who's got two names can be a great icebreaker.
And I'd be further impressed if they knew about what various managers and corporate managers had said and commented to the trade press about our strategies.
Take all that information with you when you go to the meeting, and it actually demonstrates that you've done your homework.
I'm amazed a number of times candidates come in to be interviewed by me and they've not done that research. And it's so easy to get hold of that information now on the web, in trade journals, in the financial press.
WorldPlay, great tool to use when preparing for an interview. You can do this in many different ways. You can ask a friend or a family member or your mother or your father or your partner to be the person that you're going to be interviewed by. Get them to act as the interviewer and don't prompt them too much, just see what happens.
What are the top 10 things I've done? What are my likes and dislikes? What are my good projects, bad projects? If you've role-played them and you've got the answers in your head, they come out easily. That certainly shows when you come in for the interview.
One guy I did interview and actually gave a job to told me later that he had planned for it, just with a work colleague, and done the preparation in separate offices, and it had worked well.
Visualization, great technique to use, particularly in interviews. Visualize the whole interview, visualize the interview ending in a very positive way for you. Feel very confident, visualize laughter, visualize a very positive conversation during the course of that interview, and it will happen.
Assume you are going to get the interview. It's a small thing, but it's really important. Does everyone in the household know you're expecting a call, and will they all answer the phone in the correct manner? It's highly inappropriate if somebody were to ring to offer you an interview and they get somebody on the other end of the phone who doesn't know who you are, what's the call about, doesn't know, says you're in the bath, says you're lying on the sun lounger in the back garden when you're supposed to be at work.
Have some sort of system in place whereby you've got your reasons for applying for every single job that you have done. Otherwise you're going to get caught out.
And you want to be ready with a pitch that says who you are, what you've done, and what it is that you're looking for in your next job, so that you can get that point across clearly and concisely without fluffing your lines.
I remember one particular time where I had the CV in, which I liked. I made the call and the girl picked up the phone and sounded absolutely deadly on the phone. The way she picked the phone up, the questions that I asked her, she was just very low in energy and she didn't have a thing to say. So basically she blew it.
The day before you've got your interview booked, confirm it. A lot of people don't do that. They'll just turn up. Okay, but you're making a difference. You're showing that you're interested. You also don't want to waste your time, and you don't want to waste anyone else's time.
Arriving at the interview is a critical part of the process, and it actually begins the moment you drive into the company's car park. So please do not be an hour and a half early for your interview and park in the company's car park and sit there for an hour and a half, because it might be clocked, and if someone's sitting there for an hour and a half they think, well, that person isn't very busy.
Last thing you want to do is pitch up late for your interview. It doesn't show a particularly good start, and not only that, you're going to feel in the wrong frame of mind for your interview as well. Last thing you want to do is pitch in sort of sweaty, just having to run from the tube station to the office.
A good time is about 5 minutes before your interview is due to start. Once again, if this is a large office building, you may have to sign in downstairs and get to the 20th floor. So you've got to really think about the timing, and it is absolutely vital. Too early, too much pressure on the interviewer, too late is no good.
Frequently with these companies, certainly larger companies, they've got reserved bays or disabled bays, and you don't want to have to find yourself either circling around the car park for 10 minutes or parking somewhere where you shouldn't do and then being pulled out of your interview to move your car.
Be positive, be polite to absolutely everybody that you meet, because you're being judged from the moment that anyone can see you. The CCTV cameras in most organisations now, so wherever you are, you're probably being looked at by somebody. Dress code's really important. You are judged by how you look in the first 10-15 seconds, whether we like it or not. That's just the reality of it. Now you need to identify what is the most appropriate dress code for that organisation. Lots of different ways of finding out. Obviously you can just phone up and ask the receptionist or the PA what is the appropriate dress code for their organisation. Don't assume. It always used to be men were in suits, ladies were in smart tailored clothes. Not the case anymore. It depends on who the organisation is.
If you're not sure, the best rule of thumb is to make sure that you dress conservatively. And by conservative, I'm talking about dark colours in your jacket, suit jacket or ladies' jacket, and that the blouse or shirt underneath should be of lighter colour, preferably cream or white.
The other thing you can do is park outside 5-6 o'clock in the evening the day before, find out what people are wearing when they come out.
Comedy ties, comedy socks, cartoon characters, cartoon cufflinks, cartoon scarves are just inappropriate, no matter what the role you go for.
You get examples of a managing director finishing an interview after 5 minutes because the candidate hasn't polished his shoes, and we'll give, even though people see that as a small point, we'll give a very reasonable explanation by saying, well, if someone's coming to something that important and can forget to clean the shoes, then what else could they forget? You know, and it's more reflection on the person. And certainly the guy that used to do our psychometric testing, the occupational psychologist, he used to have a huge problem with people that didn't wear watches, you know, because it was a very bad sign of organisation.
If you've been asked to take a seat in reception, when the interviewer comes out, and don't forget, this is the first time they'll have ever seen you, you're actually standing by the reception desk. It makes you look impatient, and it makes you look that you are unsatisfied at being kept waiting.
The PA stroke or the receptionist, whoever meets and greets you and takes you to the meeting room, is absolutely vital in the whole process again. Don't underestimate their importance.
I used to work for an MD actually, whose PA always used to show people into the boardroom, sit them down, get them a cup of tea or coffee before the MD would conduct the interview. And before he went in, one of the first questions he asked his PA was, what do you think of them?
It's very important that they understand that it's the whole of the company that they're dealing with, and not just myself, and they can't just switch a light on and start smiling just when they walk into my office. It's important that they're dealing with everyone in the organisation.
And be ready then, of course, if you've got your coffee, if you've got your brochures, if you've got everything ready, you're going to have to stand up and shake somebody's hand. So pick the right seat, make sure everything's put down, you're not going to knock a coffee over in the first 10 seconds.
Show an interest in them, be polite, but don't be over polite, don't be smarmy. You know, nobody likes smart ass, but show a genuine, sincere interest in them as individuals.
Be enthusiastic. And I think that actually exudes confidence. And someone who was bright and confident would inspire me. You can have as many qualifications as you like, but if you're not bright and inspiring, I wouldn't be interested.
An interviewer wants to see and hear lots of enthusiasm. They're judging you as to whether they like you, whether you're going to fit into the team, how easy or difficult will you be to manage. Are you competent? Are you capable of doing the job that they're going to ask you to do?
Ability to speak to an audience clearly, not an audience of 100 people, but 1 or 2, clearly, and get your point across. I think it's important to be able to enunciate your experience. It's very easy to write it on a piece of paper, but when it comes to explaining what you've actually done, you need to be able to do that.
What motivates me about a person is how much energy are they going to have, because when I've got people around me in my organisation, I want them to be up and energetic, because that energy has an effect on the business. If you've got people that are very low in energy, very lethargic, haven't got much going on in their life, it doesn't really do anything for my organisation or actually anything for me personally.
Because at the end of the day, if I'm going to work with them, I want to enjoy being around with them. I don't want to be with people that I don't enjoy their company.
The best interviews I've conducted from a point of view of people that have gone on to be successful have always been where the person's attitude has impressed me in the interview.
I think interviewees can be too cocky or too humble. When you're hiring people, you want people who will be part of your team, and you're proud to show around the company and meet people from outside. So people who do themselves down, talking to their shoes, things like that, not impressive when you're interviewing. Similarly, you don't want to be taking Jack the lad round to be shown off in your team, who's too cheeky and doesn't have enough knowledge and experience to offset that cheek, shall we say.
Switch your mobile phone off, or put it on stun or silent or whatever it is that you do. And also that you don't have stupid ringtones playing the Looney Tunes theme when you're just trying to put across how serious you are and how dedicated you are to the new job.
I have had a situation where a guy came on for an interview. It was a classic case of how not to do an interview. He turned up late. Whenever that happens, and this guy in particular is all hot and bothered. He came in, he spent 10-15 minutes excusing himself and explaining why the traffic jam prevented him from getting in. No sooner had he sat down, 10 minutes into the interview, his telephone rang, which is a big no-no. In any interview, mobile phone should be switched off. He wasn't prepared, or maybe he was prepared, but the impression he gave, because he was so flustered, was that he was, just wasn't the candidate, not the kind of person I want representing our company.
So, you've applied for the job. Your CV highlights your achievements and you're well prepared. And you arrive at the interview full of enthusiasm. Our research has shown that if you apply just some of the advice you've been given, you will significantly get yourself ahead of the competition. Simple, isn't it? What could possibly go wrong? Well, let's go back to the experts now to see what they have to say about making the most of the first half of your interview.
Rapport is about getting somebody to connect with you and vice versa. And of course, if you do that in an interview, you explode your chances of actually getting that job.
For me, first impressions are essential. If you speak to anyone, they say it's the first impressions last. Once you've made that impression with someone, it's very difficult to change their opinion of you.
Posture is really important. You need to walk in there, shoulders back, stand tall, be smiling a little, have this air of confidence about you.
Make sure, once again, you make eye contact with everybody in there. You may be introduced to other people.
Good firm handshake, but not too hard where you're going to break the guy or lady's hand.
Not the floppy, sweaty fish. That's not pleasant at all. A bit of confidence as you walk in the room. Very unlikely that you're going to get bitten, so you might as well come in with your head held high.
I would like to think that I subconsciously I'd make up my mind after 5 or 10 minutes. In reality, it's probably a lot sooner than that.
People like themselves. So make it really easy for this interviewer to ultimately offer you the job. And whether they like you or not actually does play quite a big part in this. So there are a number of techniques that you can use to build rapport with the person you're talking to.
When they're sitting in the actual chair, leaning forward, showing enthusiasm.
Take the chance, where you can, to notice and spot anything that you can feed back to the company. Such as, if they're on nice premises, if the people have been really friendly to you, take the opportunity to acknowledge it.
Ask a few questions of them, and suddenly they're feeling created about themselves, but they're interviewing you. So it just adds a lot of ways of differentiating yourself from other people.
In my office, for example, there are lots of clues as to my hobbies and my family, whether it be golf awards or photographs of my young son and wife.
Pictures of my horse. I've got a Buddha on the sideboard. I've got maybe some other magazines. I've got some yoga magazines over there. And it's nice when someone notices things about me and we can get into a conversation because they're very interactive. And you start building a relationship with that person when you're talking about something that you've got in common.
If you're asked to sit down at the decision maker or the interviewer's desk, just be aware, like you would if you were going into a friend's house or somebody else's home, of your personal space and what you're going to take ownership of.
They'll ask you some humble, easygoing questions to break the ice. Obviously answer those and see if you can have one or two of your own as well. Like, how long have you been in the organisation type thing.
It's a proven fact that the more somebody emulates the body language, the more synergy that person feels with the other individual. It works. it's worth doing.
Mirror and match is what we call it, but basically it's by mirroring and matching their physical posture, but don't be too obvious with it. That's the key to this, but it's important that you do it.
But if you can be subtle in how you do that, and you can mirror somebody's actions or how that they have their speech patterns or the tempo of their speech or their hand gestures.
If someone's really up there, in your face, if they're leaning forward, sometimes matching that can be good. Equally, if they sit back and they back off a little bit, maybe you want to consider that too.
Listen very carefully to the tonality of their voice. Not so much the content, what they're saying isn't vital at the moment, how they're saying it is. If they speak very quickly, then maybe you should speak a little bit more quickly than you normally would. If they speak with a very high-pitched voice, then don't try and copy the high pitch necessarily, but maybe lift your voice an octave or two. If they speak very slowly and deliberately, then you speak slowly and deliberately. Make it easy for them to communicate with you in the way that makes them comfortable.
There is a word of warning there. Just make sure you can do it if you're totally comfortable. If you're not, it can have the complete and opposite effect from what you're looking for.
It's also quite a powerful tool to break eye contact sometimes. If you get asked a question and you absolutely know the answer to it, but you want to have more impact with that answer, then what you can do is look away, pause, then deliver your answer. And you actually have a lot more impact. It's a bit like acting. Actors, actresses do this all the time.
Once again, the devil is in the detail, and these are all of the subconscious decision-making techniques that mean decision makers, when they talk of people making a gut reaction as to why they employ someone, that's the gut reaction, and that's where it comes from.
The use of humour in an interview, I think some doesn't go amiss. Crude humour, probably not. Anything that crosses too many boundaries, not a good idea.
There is a competency-based interview question that checks on humour, and the question asks, give us an example of when you made somebody laugh. That just shows how difficult the subject of humour is in the interview.
It's much better to make sure that you're appreciating it and showing that you enjoy humour and that you do have a sense of humour rather than be the one that is cracking the jokes.
The best way to create an impression in an interview is to bring supporting material, and this can give you a real advantage over other people attending.
It can be certificates, it can be records of sales charts and where you are in those sales charts, it could be a letter from a customer recommending how wonderful service you provided.
Reviews from your previous employer or your current employer, anything that you've done that's made it into the press or industry, any clippings that you've got.
If you're in selling, can you bring sales leagues, tables, targets, anything that you've achieved? If you've been an Employee of the Month, have you got a photograph? Is there an award?
References from senior managers, probably even better from customers or distributors, for example, they may have worked on projects for.
And put it in what is called a presenter, or in some cases a brag file.
And don't be shy, okay? An interview is not the place to be shy. Get that brag pack out on occasions when it's appropriate, but get it out, hand it over to the person, get them to look at it, feel it, touch it. It shows that you're very confident that you can't just talk the talk, you've actually delivered something as well.
Providing it's neat and smart, crisp and clean. We won't necessarily set up a stall and lay it all out on the interviewer's desk, but you can keep it with you in a briefcase and make sure that at any opportunity when it does come up, or if they ask you about it, you've got it there to bring out. It's really important to prepare for the interview, for the questions you're going to be asked and the questions you want to ask.
Preparing your questions is absolutely vital to a successful interview.
It's really important you can demonstrate you've thought about this interview before you go. Many people turn up for interviews with the attitude that it's all in my head and that's fine.
The key benefits are that while you're asking questions, you're controlling the interview, because you can't be answering while you're asking.
And there's an old saying where people say that, you know, good salespeople ask a lot of questions. I don't believe that. I believe that good salespeople ask good quality questions. And when someone's interviewing you, they're not looking for a big list of mundane, boring questions like what are the hours, is there a subsidised canteen, and that sort of thing.
People love to talk about themselves. Remember, the interviewer isn't a monster, they're a human being too. And people also like people to take an interest in them.
You've got to remember that I see a lot of candidates when I'm interviewing for positions. So I want like a two-way street where I'm being asked questions about our company, but not just our company, about me, my background, what I want to do in the company.
And it's a good way to engage them and get that rapport going, as well as find out some insights into what it's like to work for the company.
And it also helps warm me up towards the person, because we get some conversation going. It's not just lists of questions.
So why did they join the business? Where do they see the opportunities going for somebody like you in the business? Why should you want to join the business?
Why are they still with the company? What are their longer term ambitions? What are their big achievements in the company from their point of view?
What are some of the challenges associated with working in that organisation? And try and get the questions at more of a personal level between the two of you, as opposed to never talk about salary, for example, early on in the meetings, holidays, all those sort of incidental things that you'll get to know at a later date should they offer you the job. Focus on being able to do the job. Why would you do the job? Where the opportunity is? What are some of the challenges associated with that?
I don't want people that are just going to be yes men or yes women. I want them to be asking me and to be discussing things with me and putting me on the back foot, because at the end of the day, it's those interviews that I'm going to remember once they've gone.
And that also tells the individual that you're meeting, God, this guy's really interested in this role. He's asking me some great questions. This guy can really represent my company in whatever the job is that you're looking to do. Because when people are interviewing you these days, they're not just interviewing you for that particular job. They're also saying, you know, people talk about bandwidth. What is this guy or lady capable of? What is their potential? That's just as important as your ability to do the job.
It's great to have backup questions, and the backup questions, second phase questioning, should be questions that relate to information you've received. So be thinking about receiving information and following on with another question. So things like, you told me earlier the company's expanding. My question is, which markets are you thinking of going into?
Some of the best questions have been things like, what would be the things that you can tell me that would persuade me to take this job? Because that pushes the interviewer into thinking quite hard about it.
Good questions always begin with who, why, what, where and when. It's actually a classic sales technique, and they're called open questions. Now, there's nothing too difficult about it. It's just recognising if you can start your questions that way rather than could I, do you, will you, have you.
The reason for that is that open questions generate more of a response. If I was to ask a closed question about a company's expansion, I'd say, has your company got any plans to expand? To which the interviewer could just say yes or no. The better way to ask that question would be to say, you know, what plans does your company have for expansion? And that then becomes a conversation, because they will answer by saying that this is what we've got planned, this is what we're doing, these are new products, whatever it might be. And you can get involved back by saying, oh really, and what timescale is that over? And therefore you open up more of a dialogue and build much more of a rapport in the interviewer than you would by just asking short questions that evoke short responses.
I have had the situation where someone's turned up with 2 sheets of A4 typewritten questions. That's overkill, I'm afraid. You didn't do your preparation before you arrived.
Too often I see candidates that come to me with very banal questions that they've never really thought of before the interview, and they just throw away questions. Sometimes we ask people whether they have any questions, they even say no, which is a definite no-no.
Dealing with some of the difficult questions in an interview is obviously incredibly important, and how you handle those questions will probably make the difference between getting the job or not.
If it's a bad hire, that will reflect very badly on me.
What are your strengths and weaknesses? How would you describe yourself? Are going to appear in your interview. However contrived it may seem, you need to think of your answers.
If you can demonstrate to prospective employer that you are actually aware of your weaknesses and then demonstrate effort that you're putting in to overcome them, or effort you're prepared to put in to overcome those weaknesses, then that's something they're interested in seeing.
It's important to recognise everybody in life has had failures, and it's a very tough interviewer and a tough process that wouldn't acknowledge those. Once again, keep them in proportion. We don't want our failures to be bigger than our successes. And if we have got a failure, talk about what we learned from it, and once again, going forward, what it is you've improved as a result of that failure.
The key is to turn what is a potentially negative type answer into a positive answer.
If somebody says to me that they're not that great on the phone, but they found this fantastic course on the internet and they've been doing it for 3 months and it's just so much better, that just gives me confidence, though, that if we come across challenges during the time they're employed, they're prepared to do what it takes to make that situation better.
You know, the answer itself isn't actually that important. It's how you answer it rather than what you say.
So if somebody says to you, what have you been criticised for in the past, for example, then you might turn around to them and say, well, I am really impatient. I do get criticised for being really impatient, and sometimes I get criticised for trying to do things too quickly. And that's really because my enthusiasm sometimes just gets the better of me, and I'm really focused on results. And however we get there, it doesn't really matter too much as long as we do get there.
Maybe think of several more than you think they will ask you for, because some companies will try and catch you out in recognising that you have planned for the first one or two, and they will keep asking.
Some people accuse me of being very pernickety because I do like to cross every T and dot every I, but that's because I think it's really important. You know, attention to detail is important these days. So I don't apologise for that, it's just I think it's a very professional way of working, but I have been criticised for that in the past by some people who don't think it's so important.
If that person, if the interviewer is just rabbiting on and just talking on and on and on, and you're thinking, geez, I haven't got time, time's running out, I need to speak. Good, you've got to speak. Don't be nice. Don't let them rabbit on and just nod your head, because at the end of the day, they'll carry on talking, feeling great about themselves, and suddenly it's time to go, and they thought, oh, you didn't say much. It's not their fault, it's your fault for not asking the questions. Okay? So, for example, let's say they're rabbiting on about something and you're thinking, gee, I need to know something. You could say something like, absolutely great, just interrupt, be energetic, I really got that point, I really resonate with that, and this is an experience I had. Suddenly you're back in the game.
If someone has a gap in their CV and they haven't filled it in, so to speak, I'll always ask the question, well, where were you? What happened then? And I think honesty is the best policy. You'll quite often find in lots of industries that everybody knows everybody else. So if you've been fired from somewhere, I'll find out, because I'll have friends who will know you somewhere. So I think come clean and say. Now, I've been made redundant. It's one of those things, it's part of working life. You
could be honest and say, well, I thought I'd walk into something like X, but it didn't work out that way, you know, and at the end of the day I was wrong. And if you throw your hands up and admit you're wrong, people have more respect for you than if you try and lie your way through it. So the key to it is to be honest. In terms of qualifications, I'm pretty open-minded, but if you haven't got a university degree, there are plenty of other ways of improving your qualifications, such as membership of professional bodies, part-time study, things like that. So if someone sends me a CV, they've come straight out of school into work, and then a few years later they've gone back and done some studying after hours, etc., I think that's great. So what an interviewer might do, he will ask you a question, and you will have responded to that question, and suddenly there's a silence. How you respond to that silence is really critical moving forward. Now, my advice to you would be something like, either stay silent and smile, but more seriously, I would suggest what you do is say something like,
Has that answered your question? Is what I've said clear? Put it back on them. Put the question back. It's respectful, it breaks the silence, and it gets you back in control. Don't ever try and handle silence by carrying on talking, because it'll turn into waffle.
One of the trickiest areas of the interview is where people get stuck in talking about negatives. And those negatives normally come up from the question, why have you left your last job? Why are you looking for a move now?
Making sure that you paint your current employer in a positive light, and if it's the case of they can't offer you prospects anymore, then there's nothing wrong with saying that in an interview if that's what you want out of life. If a company can't offer you what you want, there's nothing wrong with moving on. But for you to sit there and slag them off would not look very good at all.
People look to how you talk about others as to how potentially you're going to talk about them.
So, when people ask you why you left, what was wrong with your previous job, try and look at it on a positive side and prepare your answer to talk positively about not why you're leaving a company, but actually what opportunity you're looking for next, or what else presented itself after that job and why you made that change. It's a minefield, and if you want to spend an hour in a meeting talking about your old boss and getting yourself into deeper and deeper trouble, go ahead, but you won't get the job.
Another thing you need to be very careful about is if the interviewer starts swearing. Now please don't think you can mirror that. The amount of times I have my clients saying to me that they couldn't believe how many times the person swore in the interview. When I talk to my candidate about it, they say all I was doing was mirroring them.
An interviewer may make some comments or make some suggestions which you may find either inappropriate or you think that they've overstepped the mark. In those instances, you should make sure that you get across politely that you think that that's incorrect or they've overstepped the mark, and make be constructive as you can about it. But make sure that you stand your ground and that you are true to what you're thinking and what you believe.
If you're not clear on the question, go back to them and say, excuse me, I didn't quite understand what you're saying. Could you just repeat that, or could you just clarify, do I understand what you mean by this is da-da? It's okay to do that. And it's even okay in situations where someone asks you a really smart question. It's absolutely okay to say, I don't know. I'm sorry, I can't answer that question. I haven't got a clue, or whatever it is. Don't make things up. Don't try and blag your way through an interview. You'll get caught out.
Okay, so you've been aware of your body language, you've asked some great questions, and you've dealt with some tricky situations. I understand that there's a lot to think about, but for the right job it's worth it. So you're nearly there. Now let's look at the final stage of the interview process.
Part of the interview process may involve a presentation, and it's really important, if you want to nail that job, that we get this bit right. What type of presentation and when you should present, to a certain extent, is in the hands of the interviewer and the employer. They may ask you at the end of first interview to prepare something for the next meeting.
If you're being asked to do a presentation, which a lot of companies do now, then be absolutely clear what they are expecting from you. And if you're not sure, phone up again before the second interview and ask some questions to be clear that you're going to present the information that they're actually asking you to present.
My own personal opinion on this is you should only do one if you're requested. And there's a danger by standing up and doing a presentation when you haven't been asked to do one, that you can make yourself look bad almost. And if you're volunteering to do one when it hasn't been requested, then you've got to make sure it's absolutely spot on, because they'll be judging you very critically.
The most important way of presenting that information is the way that you feel very comfortable and confident with. So if you're a wizard on PowerPoint and you love it, use it. If you're great with white flip charts and you can just do it on the huff, then do it that way.
If you're not comfortable with using any of the technology that's been mentioned, then give them a handout. Print it out on paper and hand it to people. That's fine. Don't go into an interview unprepared and not know the technology.
Presentations shouldn't take any longer than 5 or 10 minutes. They should be very direct, very succinct, have a beginning, a middle and an end, and hopefully put some content in there that the person you're presenting to is not expecting. New content. If they ask you to do a presentation on their company, don't just copy their website and give it back to them. Maybe do a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats.
But the key elements of a good presentation are firstly, summarise what you're going to say. That's very important. Make sure that you don't rush, and also please don't waffle.
Make sure that it's all about the benefits that you're going to deliver to that business.
I'd also like that intertwined with a knowledge of the market. I'd like them to demonstrate they know about our market and the market dynamics.
People's attention span is very, very low, very short. So what you've got to do is keep it concise, keep it all about benefits.
Time yourself before you do it, have a dummy run and practice it. If there is no time constraints, stick to a maximum of 10 minutes.
And I actually want to see during the PowerPoint somewhere what impact you think you're going to have on my business. That's one of the key things, of course, I'm looking for.
So in other words, demonstrate what you will do for that organisation when you get there.
Closing the interview, probably the most important couple of minutes you're going to have in the whole of that meeting. There's a couple of key steps you need to go through when you close the meeting. First of all, summarise the meeting. Summarise what you love about the company, what you see as the great opportunity with that particular role. Summarise any next actions that you may have agreed to do for that individual. And also ask that person what are their thoughts on you as a candidate for that role. Okay, don't be shy. This is not the time to be shy. Once you're out of that door, you might never get back through it. So draw out any concerns that they might have about you doing that job.
Flush out, while you've got the chance with the interviewers, anything, any barriers that would stop you going forward, or any barriers that would stop them offering you the job. It may be something small that you can clear up. It may be something in the interview that you haven't explained very well. I think this is a great time at the end of the interview just to make sure that's right.
If they say, no, I've got no real concerns at all, I think you could do the job, then say, great, thank you very much, I really want this job. How do I move this forward?
One guy recently came to see me, and at the end of the interview he had demonstrated his enthusiasm, but actually told me he really wanted the job, and his keenness, his enthusiasm was a sincere one, and that sold it to me. It made a demonstrative impression, and that guy got the job in the end.
What do you need to get right? You need to have a conclusion that says, that thanks them for their time. You need a conclusion that will say to them that you're interested, and you need a conclusion that asks what the next step is. If at the very least you do those three things, you've gone some way to closing the interview. If you want to take it further, that's fine too. And taking it further would then be moving into classic closing techniques. Those closing techniques would be asking for when the second interviews are, when would you like to see me again, if I was available, when would you prefer to see me, next week or the week after, on Monday or Tuesday. So for many people that will seem abhorrent to even come close to asking people those types of questions, But once again, executive, management and sales positions, people will be expecting you to lay down on the line and say you're interested in the job. If you can't and feel uncomfortable with doing any of those, just make sure as you walk out, you tell the interviewer that you're very keen to pursue it. And if you were asked back, you'd say yes.
My own personal experience of closing an interview was when I met the MD of the last recruitment company I worked for and built a financial recruitment division for. And at the end of the first interview, I asked him, did he have any reservations about my ability to fill the role that he was looking to fill? And he said that as far as he could see, I was a young man with a bright future in recruitment ahead of me. And I then asked him if that bright future involved working for his company. And he just sort of laughed and said, you're trying to close me. And so let's see him at the second interview.
At the end of the interview, sometimes it can go a bit dead, but what I like to see is someone who is still lively, gets up, shakes my hand and tells me that they've really enjoyed meeting me and they're really looking forward to hearing from me.
After the second interview, I closed him again and I said to him that, did I have the job? And he said that he'd seen a number of people and was looking to formulate packages and structure packages for individuals. To which I asked, well, I was the first person you're looking to structure a package for? And he said he'd phone me later, which he did and offer me the job.
When the interview's finished and you've left, take the chance to just feed back to whoever it was that introduced you to the interviewer or set up the meeting. Maybe it was the personnel department, maybe it was HR, maybe it was another line manager.
What I would recommend is you write a letter just to reiterate your enthusiasm about wanting to work for the company, saying how nice it was to meet me, and that would just remind me of you. Whereas if you leave it and someone else writes me the letter, I'm going to think about them.
Play it to win. Go through the interview, make sure you get the offer. You want as many offers as possible. You want to be in a position of choice. However much during the interview you feel that it's not for you, don't let that influence how you come over. You could change your mind down the line.
The final stage will be references. They will take up references, obviously, normally the references that you've given them. So this is often where people have made mistakes in the past, where they pull out references out of thin air and they haven't checked with the referees that they can actually use this information. So as part of this process, get the references all sorted out before you go to even to your first interview. Line them up, phone them up and say, I'm going for an interview, is it okay if I use you as a reference, etc, etc. So check your references and make sure that they are going to say what you want them to say.
One thing that might impress the interviewer is by you asking to meet people in those current roles in that company, because you can obviously then demonstrate to them that you want to find out more, so that you will put yourself in a position, if offered the job, that you have got a strong factual basis to make a decision on. It's not a woolly decision. You've done as much preparation, looked into it as much as you can, found out as much as you can.
You're going to be spending a lot of time at this place. Where are you going to work? You've had an interview in an office, you've got no idea what the rest of the offices are like. So I would recommend that you maybe ask if you can spend half a day, get them to show you around where you're going to work, meet some of the people you're going to be working with. I think that shows a lot of commitment and enthusiasm, and if that was me and someone asked me if they could do that, I'd be very impressed.
Look and see how the other employees are. Do they look happy? Do they look like they're sort of a satisfied, enthusiastic bunch? Do you feel you're going to be able to get along with the ethos and the culture of the company?
An interviewer might say to you, what are your salary expectations for this role? Now, do not fall into this trap. Do not tell them. Turn that round and ask them, what do they think this job is worth to their company? What is the value? What are they expecting to pay? Now, in a lot of cases, you'll have an idea because it would have been put in the advert or someone will have told you during the course of the process. Most of the time, conversations about money come up in the second or final meeting. Okay, they generally don't come up in the first, unless the interviewer is concerned that your expectations are a long way out from what they are prepared to pay. And at the first interview, that if that's a real concern for either you or them, then get it out into the opening meeting, because you don't want to waste time with companies that can't afford you, and you don't want to waste time talking to companies that have got no intention of paying you what you think you're worth or what you're currently earning.
And I think it's quite okay to say, well, obviously I'm not earning that now, but that's what I'm looking for in my new job. It's without giving away, because giving away, you don't want to give away too much, but you do want to aspire to new things. So my advice would be, tell them what you're looking for. Obviously it's not what I'm being paid now, but it's what I'm looking for in my next job, and I think I'm worth it, and that's what I'm going for.
Let's not forget, this is a very sensitive part of the process. If you highball, which means going in with a figure that's unrealistic, they're likely to reject you from the overall process and go for somebody cheaper. Equally, if you go in with a figure that's too low, a lowball figure, then you may end up making a move for a job that's paying you less than you're currently on, or the same as what you're on, and in which case your chances of staying there diminish with your satisfaction levels. So it's important both parties understand that it's a figure right for you and for them.
You need to make sure you know what companies like mine are paying for that level of job.
You need to remember that whatever you ask for, the company may look to negotiate you down as well. So be very sure.
I would never go in with my top offer. I would recommend that you actually find out what the current rates are in your marketplace so that you can negotiate.
What are they prepared to pay? What is the banding for this salary? If there's a bonus element, what is the bonus element? Is it open-ended? What is it based on? What would they expect me to earn in the first year if I was a salesperson? What is their top salesperson earning this year? What is their worst salesperson earning this year? Get some evidence from them as well, and turn it into a discussion rather than just a pure question and answer situation.
If you're in the fortunate position of being near that job offer, or actually having had the job offer, and it's down to salary negotiation, if you've used a recruitment agency, my suggestion is use them to negotiate your salary. Take yourself away from that. It gets very emotive, very emotional. At the same time, get the professionals in. They might be able to secure a better deal on your behalf.
Once you've actually got your job offer and you're looking at the salary, just the figure of the salary, and it's not quite what you're looking for, but everything else is right about the job, why don't you maybe just ask for a review, perhaps in 3 months, a salary review in 3 months?
Print off all of your benefits package and lay them out side by side. Sometimes there are benefits which the companies are giving you which are valued higher than you expected when you look at them a second time. Similarly, you may find that you're going from a company that had a great healthcare policy to a company with a healthcare policy where there's a £500 excess on it. So you want to make sure that you understand the full benefits package and you do a real like-for-like comparison.
You might have parking, you might be working in a city where it's a nightmare to park and it's going to cost you a fortune to park there. You might be offered flexi time.
If you've got any concerns, voice them. Okay, get those concerns out. People will respect you more for it. And I've had many times when I've tried to talk myself out of a job and said, look, I don't think I'm the best person for this job. And then the role is flipped completely and the individual starts persuading you that you are the best person for this role.
Make sure you do absolute due diligence on the company, that you can speak to anybody that you know or find out people that can work there, that can give you an insight into the company. Even make a second phone call if you've got any questions, or a third phone call back to human resources or to your potential new boss. You want to make absolutely sure that company's right for you. You don't want to be going into somewhere and then 2 months later figuring out that you've made a terrible mistake.
And also look at what experience you're going to gain. Where is this job going to lead you? It's going to lead you to the next stage. So it's not just about the salary, it's about the organisation, the benefits, the working environment and what you're going to learn. So make sure you don't just look at the bottom line. Now,
as a byproduct of a successful, moving, growing company, you'll get the benefits. So that's what you should be talking about. Throw it back at them. It makes you much more confident, much more credible, and thinking, wow, I'm interested in this guy. He's not only interested in good compensation, but he's interested in how he can grow, how he can move, and how he can challenge and be challenged in a thriving, working, forward-moving environment.
You're in a really vulnerable time once you've handed your notice in before you start with any company. Try and work to the start date they offer you, or if you can, actually get in there a bit earlier to show your willingness. It's really important when you're changing jobs to keep the momentum moving. So, if a company wants you to start the following Monday and you can do it, do it. Okay, it's important you get in the job. You'll get your holiday time if that's owed to you and needs to be paid, fine, but don't delay it.
Because if I interview someone else who is just as nice as you and they can start quicker than you, I'm more than likely to offer them the job.
Alright, putting all that together, I think the most important thing to remember is this. The interviewer is looking to recruit someone for the job. They have a position, they want it filled. The interviewing is a sifting process. Maybe one, maybe two, maybe three interviews, who knows. People see it as a negative process. They see it as an opportunity to be rejected and to be knocked out. Every time a candidate walks through that door, the interviewer is hoping it's going to be the right one. All they're looking for is enough excuses to give you the job. If you attack every interview with that mental approach, you're going to be more positive, more enthusiastic, and you'll get more successes. They want you. They actually want you. They want you to be right. Yeah? Just give them the opportunity to recruit you.
Congratulations, you've made it. You've heard lots of opinions and lots of advice. Now it's time to start thinking about you. One of the most important things to remember is to create your own style and approach using the techniques that apply to you. We can't guarantee your success, but the experience of our experts has shown that by applying these skills, you'll improve your chances significantly. So keep focused, practice, don't give up, and best of luck.